Throughout time, the prominence of the gay middle-class male has not changed. However, the frequency of visibility has drastically altered this community to the point that a new culture has emerged. Homosexuality has occurred as long as humans have roamed the earth, but this community has only recently begun to form a distinct commonality that connected people. For this project, we will discuss the circumstances that led to which we now consider the new normal in American pop culture since the 1890s. Gay men have had a prominent figure throughout history, yet it was not safe to openly express such desires until the 1960s. Even then, a large threat still existed in society. Some would argue that the threat greatly occurs today, but the conditions have changed. This initially led to the necessity of double lives. Due to social acceptance standards and the obvious inability to partner with a man, many gay men were forced to have a family and a wife, void of desire, and then a secret male lover on the side. A homophile movement began in the 1870s, making it dangerous for two men to love each other. The Industrial Revolution and the increase in urbanization created an atmosphere in the cities in which gay men could forge distinct identities as autonomous individuals and as an oppressed group. Until this point, there was no distinct gay space that harbored acceptance and was fueled by common sexuality. Large cities became the center for homosexual gatherings, which led to the creation of a distinct space. Furthermore, the opportunity for anonymity in large cities provided the opportunity to participate in the emerging gay community as much as one desired, but still continue to uphold a socially respectable life. Cities allowed men to create a double life or led them to break free of social constrictions, living how one wished. Public spaces, like bars, parks, bathhouses, or living establishments, were turned into safe spaces for homosexuals. The attitude of the public on homosexuality was skewed toward masculinity and traditional standards. Men that would cross-dress were seen as a form of entertainment, whereas homosexual men were more masculine, were not accepted. The trouble with the community became concentrated when the law and governmental restrictions on who to love during the 1950s McCarthy's House of Un-American Activities and their attempt to see out gay ironically broke the public silence about the topic and began to unite those who felt the effects of oppression. The breaking of silence and the forming of a cohesive movement to stop the harassment of homosexuals fueled the community to come together to fight for a cause. World War II gave rise to the homophile movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Millions of young men found themselves in intimate same-sex environments which led those who were homosexual to realize they were not alone. By the 1951, the Mattachine Foundation outlined its mission: unite homos, educate the public, encourage tolerance, and engage in politics. This radical magazine spread the word on homosexuality and the happenings of the community across the country. A large moment in history emerged when the Mattachine One magazine was charged with obscenity laws for spreading lewd activity through writing and pictures to citizens. This case reached the Supreme Court, and the Mattachine Foundation won its case, laying the groundwork for other advocacy publications. The One Inc. v. Olson in 1958 ruled that pro-homosexual writing was not obscene and did not break the Comstock laws that prohibited male distribution of obscenity. This really allowed gays to move into the light and be in public view. The distribution of homosexual writing created a way for homosexuals to connect with each other without the necessity of meeting in bars and private houses. In 1963, the East Coast Homophile Organization formed. ECHO's fundamental desire was concerned with homosexuals gaining equality before the law and equal treatment by fellow citizens. Americanism remained important to the gay rights movement. Numerous organizations and activists played their demands for gay and lesbian equality within the broader tradition of Americans' revolution heritage and invoked the Republic's rhetoric in fashioning a large language of protest. The Stonewall Riot in 1969 transformed the gay rights movement from a small handful of activists to a widespread movement for equal rights and acceptance. Before long, the proliferating organizations were attracted not only politically disaffected, but also many of the gay men and women who had observed the homophile movement from a distance and refrained from taking part in it. The movement continued to gain ground, especially as it moved into the political realm. In 1973, the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality from its official list of mental disorders. This is significant because it removes some of the stigma regarding homosexuality as a mental illness that can and should be cured. This promotes acceptance of gays in society, but also internalizes acceptance within the individual. A few years later, Harvey Milk became the first openly gay commissioner in the U.S. He was a huge proponent in sponsoring a bill to end sexual orientation discrimination. In 1978, Harvey Milk was assassinated by another San Francisco supervisor, but is held as a gay rights hero. By the 1980s, the disease that brought devastation to the gay community also helped to form a more cohesive and active culture. AIDS brought gays to build civil institutions to counter the disease, forged ties with scientists and politicians, and were forced into more intense relations with their own families and families of loved ones. The public became riveted on the gays. The more visibility that the gay rights movement gained, the more they were exposed and ultimately integrated into pop culture. From this visibility, acceptance slowly grew. The strongest ways in trying to push for acceptance is in the assimilating to heteronormative culture and showing how homosexuals are normal. The more you are willing to articulate political issues in a way that plays to a normal audience, the more success you will likely have. Modern pop culture, like TV shows, attempt to desexualize in order to de-vilify the gay movement. This suggests that society is most threatened by the sexual acts of homosexuals. In recent years, gay visibility has become the most pronounced in television. Homosexuality is seen as an alternative to the traditional roles of heteronormative society by breaking down the necessity for traditional family structures. In our common age, there has been a commercialization of gays to try to promote the normality and similarities between homosexuals and heterosexuals. This breaks down the barrier separating the sexualities and attempts to create more acceptance of homosexuals in average society. This is clearly seen with popular TV shows like Modern Family, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, New Normal, and Glee. The demographics of the stations are changing with society. The more shows that exemplify homosexuals in a familiar, structured relationships, the more accepted and assimilated gay males have become. It was triumphant for the gay community when television shows showed the first aired gay kiss on Will and Grace, and some of the first same-sex marriages were shown on Friends, Northern Exposure, and Roxanne. These weddings were portrayed as desexualized replicas of the heterosexual ritual. The visibility that surrounded the gay, white, middle-class, homosexual males is saturated in pop culture. They have a place in society because the public is fascinated with what the community will be engaged in next. With the recent 2012 elections, there are now 9 states that have legalized same-sex marriage. The 2 largest gay rights movements revolve around marriage equality and homosexuals in the military. These issues are slowly dissipating with the continued exposure of the homosexual males, the new normal. However, the gay man in the eye of the public is most likely concentrated on a white middle-class male. Susanna Walters purports that the emergence into the public view can aid in the process of liberation. Yet the glare of commercial culture can often produce a new kind of visibility, itself supported by a relentless march toward assimilation. Television, while it has formed the way for America to begin to accept and perpetuate rights, has also created a whitewashed exhibition of homosexuality. Traditional positions of power are still upheld and preserved during the displays of the new normal male, still facilitating heteronormative standards. One cultural example is seen in a gentrification of the Castro District in San Francisco, California. In the 1970s, the Castro District gained a reputation for having relatively cheap housing with the opportunity for renovation. The gay-friendly atmosphere provided by Harvey Milk's liberal political activism created a space that attracted gays. The gentrification of the Castro District by middle-class gay men pushed out the long-term poor minority resident, as well as the poor gays and lesbians. This especially impacted the Latino Mission District and the African-American neighborhoods near the Castro District. Furthermore, throughout history, males have had more access to capital than lesbians and even heterosexual women. This creates an invisibility of lesbians in the community and shows how gay white males have become the most identifiable gay group. This is even proven in the political realm as well. The Human Rights Campaign, or HRC, which was founded in 1980, is a politically active organization that sponsors gay-friendly candidates. It has now far eclipsed all rivals as the most visible organ of lesbian and gay politics. Warner suggests that since most of the donors of HRC are well-to-do males, the board of directors caters more likely to the donors' needs and wants, insinuating the impact of the well-to-do, most likely white homosexual males. Another example of the media showing an overproportion of gay white males is the gay advocacy magazine Out, which is almost completely representative by only showing one person of color on the cover of the magazine in 2011. The media rarely represents queer persons of color. The problem is that embracing the standards merely shows shame on those who stand further down the ladder of respectability. As Marlon Riggs discusses in the documentary Tongues Untied, there is a silence in the African American culture. This silence equals death. There is a necessity in our society to promote these more invisible sides of the gay community, such as queers of colors and transgenders. As we move forward in our society, there needs to be a promotion of these cultures. Political and social acceptance takes time and is incremental. Matilda Sycamore Bernstein argues that there is a violence of assimilation because it promotes the homophobia that is in our society, but neutering the homosexual movement in the institutions like marriage should be completely abolished. But it's like Tim Gill expressed in class. I don't care if you don't agree with marriage. If you don't want to get married, don't. But this is about me being able to provide for my husband in case I die. Tim Gill is the perfect representation of the new normal male. He is wealthy, white, homosexual, and involved in politics. While he is part of the new normal, he is also fighting for the rights of all queers equally. The new normal male is only a representative of the small demographic, but there is power in that group. The new normal is able to further the acceptance and representation of all queers. The course of queer history has been altered, and a new culture is forming for homosexuals. The future holds more assimilation through further equality.